Mandelbrot to a breakthrough. In 1980, he created an equation of his own, one that combined all of the Julius sets into a single image. When Mandelbrot iterated his equation, he got his own set of numbers. Graphed on a computer, it was a kind of roadmap of all the Julius sets, and quickly became famous as the emblem of fractal geometry. The Mandelbrot set.
It's not easy to describe the Mandelbrot set visually. It looks like a man, it looks like a cat, it looks like a cactus, it looks like a cockroach. It's got little bits and pieces that remind us of almost anything that you can see out in the real world, particularly living things. So it has a character that reminds us of a lot of things, and yet it itself is unique and new.
The Mandelbrot set is real, an absolute thing, no question whatsoever. Any mathematician or any computer scientist or student in a school can study it and find the same, describe the same thing. It's a common experience. And so such things that can be magnified forever and have infinite precision do exist, but they're not touchable.
It's a geometrical shape, an icon, if you wish, which somehow embodies as an example a very important aspect of how the world works. Somebody
It's a geometrical shape, an icon, if you wish, which somehow embodies as an example a very important aspect of how the world works.
Mandelbrot was issuing a bold challenge to long-standing ideas about the limits of mathematics.
Somehow embodies as an example.
The blinders came off, and people could see forms that were always there, but formerly were invisible.
The Mandelbrot set was a great example of what you could do in fractal geometry. Just as the archetypical example of classical geometry is the circle.
When you zoom in, you see them coming up again, so you see self-similarity. You see, by zooming in, you zoom, you're zooming in, you're zooming in, and pop. Suddenly it seems like you're exactly where you were before, but you're not. It's just that way down there, it has the same kind of structure as way up here, and the sameness can be grokked.
Now we'll begin our serious exploration of the Mandelbrot set. A voyage which, in fact, could last forever and ever, much longer than the lifetime of the universe. I have here the full set, about 6 inches across. Now, if I blow this up, I'll increase the magnification now 13 times, and you see more and more detail is appearing. And the interesting thing is you see mini Mandelbrots, replicas, almost identical, yet perhaps subtly different, of the original set. And I can go on doing this. Here's a magnification of more than 3,000 times. So the original picture, about 6 inches across, is now half a mile across. And no matter how much we magnified it, a million times, a billion times, until the original set was bigger than the entire universe, we would still see new patterns, new images emerging, because the frontier, the end set, is infinitely complex. And when I say infinitely, I really mean that. Most people, when they say infinitely, they mean only rather big. But this is really infinity. is so remarkable, in fact, astounding, about the Mandelbrot set is that although it's infinitely complex, it's based on incredibly simple principles, unlike almost everything in modern mathematics. In fact, anybody who can add and multiply can understand the principles on which it's based. You don't even have to subtract or divide, still less use logarithms or trigonometrical functions to comprehend how the Mandelbrot set is created. In fact, in principle, it could have been discovered any time in human history and not merely in 1980. But the problem is this: although it's only based on adding and multiplying, you have to carry out those operations millions, billions of times to create
Don't
a
let
complete
anyone
set.
glory in their
And that's why
wisdom
it was not
or in
discovered
their riches,
until
but let
the
them
era of
glory
modern
who know me.
computers.
Shalom, shalom, family. Sorry if I left this thing on, but let's say the Lord's Prayer real fast. Shalom, shalom. Our Father in heaven, honored be thy name. May thy kingdom come, and thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us each day our daily bread, and forgive us of our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us on the righteous path, and guard us from evil. In your name we pray. Amen. All right. So, scripture of the day is this. Thus says the Lord, let not the wise man glory in his wisdom, neither let the mighty man glory in his might. Let not the rich man glory in his riches. And let's go to one more. But let him that glorieth glory in this, that he understandeth and knoweth me, that I am the Lord, which exercises loving kindness, judgment, and righteousness in the earth. For in these things I delight, says the Lord. So truth, in all truth, is actually good. All truth is a good thing to have. One of the major things to understand about truth is DNA. Now, what's the interesting thing about DNA is that DNA is actually a language. DNA is not just a form of nature that's just a normal thing, but it is a language. But the problem with DNA is that it's very, 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 it has to be understood that it's very limited. So the note, I'm going to open up a note I'm going to bring forth on Sunday. As every Sunday, we do our little synthetic Sunday, as I'm starting to keep that rotation going. But I want to show you a little video that I think is important to understand before we start talking about DNA. I'm going to show you this little video right here. I'm going to let this play.
Two sisters take the same DNA test. The results show that one sister is 10% French, the other 0%. Both sisters share the same two parents and therefore the same set of ancestors. So how can one be 10% more French than the other? Tests like these rely on our DNA to answer questions about our ancestry. But our DNA actually can't tell us everything about who we are or where we're from.
Now, I just want to let it play up to that part. And the reason why is because I want you to hear what it just said there. DNA, right? You see what it said right there? Our true ancestry is not represented in our DNA test results. Now, what does that mean? When you take a DNA test and you get the results, though they tell you that you may be in such and such location, right? Some of them may say you're in Europe, some of them may say you're in Africa or Asia and things like that. That's not actually a pinpoint accurate picture. It's an assumption. In fact, most common DNA results are actually taking the modern populations on where most of the DNA actually is and taking the DNA results and pinpointing the person to that location. So the problem with DNA tests is that when people look at a DNA test, they'll say that if someone's test results come up in Africa, they'll say, oh, they must be African. They must always been in Africa. Their ancestors must always been in that location. But that's not what DNA actually tell us. What DNA actually tells us is our ancestry results. It actually tells you who you're related to. It tells you who you actually link down. If you go to mtDNA, right, that's going to be the mother's line. That's going to tell you how far it goes with your mother and who that's connected with. If you go with the Y chromosome, you're going to get the father's line, right? And then you got the autosome and different things like that. But let's focus on the Y chromosome. The reason why is because I think it's important to know the complexity and the intelligence behind DNA. Now, once we actually get that understanding, then we can actually understand something very important. We do have the understanding that DNA does group people together. That's called haplogroups. When they group a group into haplogroups, those are actually considered people who are actually commonly related. People are actually closely related and closely packed. DNA is actually one of those things that is actually a language. It's like math. In fact, I'm opening up a note here. Math is also a language, right? Math is also a language. It has its own language. It's just like blueprints, right? When someone is they work in construction, they probably know how to read blueprints, most likely. I'm going to show you something here. So math is also a language, just like DNA is a language, right? Math is also a language. Math is a way that people communicate in a form, and basically not with words, but with symbols and signs. For example, we've seen that when we've seen that David received the instructions to how to build the temple, and he said that he understood the design. We see that commonly today. This is actually a language right here. This is actually a language. Most people, when they see this, they understand it. They know when it's like that, when it's bent out like that, that's a door, right? They know most of these things, different little designs that's going to give us different understandings for what it is, right? That's actually what DNA is. DNA is also a language, but we have to know how to understand it, right? Kind of like how David understand it. You can see in First Chronicles 28 and 10, take heed now, for the Lord has chosen you. He's talking to Solomon. You see the prophet David, he's talking to Solomon. He says, take heed now, for the Lord has chosen you to build an house for the sanctuary. Be strong and do it. Then David gave to Solomon, his son, the pattern. Notice he gave him the pattern of the porch, right? He gave him the pattern of the porch. He says, and the house thereof, and the treasures thereof, and the upper chambers thereof, and the inner, right? All these things. Go down a little bit. I'm going to skip right here. And all this said David, the Lord made me. Now look what he says here. Look what he says the Lord made him to understand. The Lord made me to understand in writing by his hand on me. You see what he just said there? Even all the works of this pattern. So why did he have to understand this? Because David was actually looking at a blueprint. This is actually one of the earlier blueprints besides the blueprint of the Ark of the Covenant and all the things in the first tabernacle, right? That was all finished. But this is another blueprint. And he says that he understands it. Mathematics is a language as well. So when we get blueprints and we get mathematics, we also got to understand how to understand that language, right? It's important not to just jump into the language and think you understand it, but actually study it, look into the different methods to different things, right? That's the same thing with DNA. The understanding of DNA is that it doesn't tell us exactly where we are, but that's the problem with a lot of DNA tests, that a lot of DNA tests are actually targeting on pointing to where we are. For example, there's a common DNA test that is seen when someone is Ashkenazi, when they pull up the J1 and J2, and that DNA test will sometimes say that they're in Europe. It actually usually will point to the upper areas of Europe, and they'll actually put, usually on the DNA test, I forget how you say it, the Jewish, I don't know how you word it, basically the dispersal of them, pretty much. And they'll say they came from that area, and we know that that must have been an area where they left Israel. Now, is that a historical document, though? No. DNA is not a historical document that tells you exactly where they're at. So that's usually when you see Jewish DNA results, they end up here. Now, why is that important? The reason why that's important is because we have to stop relying on where these DNA results put you. That's the problem with DNA, is that's not how DNA works. Rather, DNA is actually, the best way to understand DNA is that it's usually going to put you into a group. It's not going to really tell you the background history that much. Now, you can go and trace all the way to how far your ancestors traced down, but that's just going to bring you to who you're related to. That's not going to actually tell you where exactly you were. Now, they got new methods on doing DNA, which is actually, now they actually have methods to extract DNA from ancient peoples, right? People that died from a long time ago. For example, they found the Philistines, right? I talked about this before. Let me show you, right? It was a big deal. A lot of people had put it aside them because what it actually said when they found these Philistines. If you know, the DNA of the Philistines is going to actually be a certain DNA. That's R1B M269. If you don't understand that, that's all right. That's actually a European stock. That was a big deal because they actually found out that the Europeans and the Philistines share a common ancestor. They actually said, and this actually was mind-blowing because this actually revealed to us that the Philistines were actually European stock. That just basically means they were up Japheth. Now, that's mind-blowing because long ago, many people thought the Philistines were Canaanites, or they thought they was just a people who most likely was of Ham. But now people get it understood that the Philistines were actually they came from a far off country and they settled in the area. In fact, they actually went to war with Ramses the third and the second. And Ramses ended up settling them in the area where you see today called Israel. Now, what's the major thing about that is that this DNA is actually the key DNA that pinpoints a lot of Ashkenazis to this area. Now, what's the problem with that? Remember what I told you about DNA. DNA, when you actually look at DNA, it doesn't actually tell you where they came from or where they were, right? When they look at that DNA, they just say, oh, it's right there. It pinpoints to this area. But when you look very close on the DNA and the understanding of it, then you understand that the DNA results that they find actually are going to be a evidence of a very, very distinct evidence for who peoples are, right? It puts people into a haplogroup group. This actually allows us to understand it. Now, understand this. If the Philistines are Japheth, and we got, I'm gonna make sure I quote this to you, so you see that I'm not just saying something. I want to quote this to you. The Ashkenazi Jews had roughly 70 to 60% contribution to the Philistines. Now, that's very important to understand. What would that mean if they had 70 to 60% contribution to the Philistines? Well, that would mean that they would probably be in this area because we don't know where the Philistines exactly were. Now, they mainly believe they came from here, right? Captar. They believe they came from this area, and that's what this little map was that I was just looking at. Go down to it right here. This little map actually talks about where they came from. This is actually the area they believe they came from, but the genetics actually point to this area because they know they're actually related to most of the pretty much the European. They just call them pretty much, that's a European line, they would say. And what's also important about it, what's important about understanding that is that there was all types of peoples in Israel, all types of peoples, right? We have Africans in that area. We have Europeans in that area. And when I say African, I'm talking about the Hamites, some being the Japhanites. So we got Japhanites, Shemites, and Hamites in that area. Now, if you actually understand the picture that the Lord's actually painting here, this is actually what the Lord wants us to understand, that this little area, many different people actually entered in this area. That's important for us to know. The reason why that's important for us to know, we have to consider ourselves to be wiser than our ancestors before to understand these things very carefully. Because our ancestors before, a lot of them, they would just take it by this person said so this must be right. Or this person said this, or this must be right. But we can actually look at the evidence today so that we can evaluate the situation of the truth. So what I want to do is show you something that I think is very important to know, because there's constant wars going on in Israel and different areas. And I just today had seen an Ashkenazi boasting on his flesh. The problem with that is that he's ignorant to the facts of what actually is going on or what he actually is. Now, I say this in love, as I have a Ashkenazi friend, quote unquote, his name is Shalom. He has two sons and two daughters. He's a kind fellow. I would say that the relationship we have right now is at mutual terms because he doesn't believe in Christ, and we had talked about that with Christ a little bit, and he doesn't want to have that conversation. So sometimes when those things happen, there is a little divide. But I want to let you know that in the sense of understanding, I did get a little bit of background of understanding of his background or where he came from, some things where he told me where he came from, Russia and different things like that. I think it's important to understand something. If you don't know about the Turkish invasion of Israel, you may not be aware that many Ashkenazis today are actually Turks. It's very important to understand that. Now, why is that important? Because we cannot, if we have a truth, we have to bring forth that truth. If that truth is not brought forth, you know what happens? A lie starts to manifest. And what happens when a lie manifests? All types of things. There's no need to continue on to that. But let me show you something. So this right here is your common Sephardic or Ashkenazi, or even most of them in the Middle East DNA. You can see they look very similar. In fact, they are similar. And the reason why is that all you have to do is look at those in Turkey. Now, where is Turkey? Right here, right? Now, why am I talking about Turkey? Because we 100%, without a doubt, know historically and with a confirmation of understanding that Turkey is full of Turks, right? Turkey, for the sake of understanding, there is a lot of Turks in Turkey. Now, let's actually look at the Turkish DNA. Let's take a quick look at the Turkish DNA to get an idea of that. Now, remember, when someone is mixed, they have multiple different Y chromosomes in them. Now, if someone's pure, they don't have multiple Y chromosomes. But if they are mixed, they're going to have multiple Y chromosomes. Right here, this is the Ashkenazi DNA. Now it's broken up in pieces, and then you can see it's color coordinated. I'm going to show you something with that. But first, let's look at the Turkish line right here. This is the Turkish DNA. Now, what's very important to notice about this is that it has almost every single Y chromosome in the Ashkenazi, right? J2, R1b, we can see J1 right there, right? We see I, we see G, we see almost every single Y chromosome in it. In fact, I made this. I'm going to show you this because I thought this was fairly interesting. That is this obvious. I think it's very, very interesting that something like this is going on that's this obvious. And the reason why I think this is important is because there's a lot of people who start to boast in their flesh, and we need to bring forth understanding to truth. We need to bring understanding to truth. But I want you to look at this. I want you to look at this. So let me actually zoom and go to this side. So this is the one of the Ashkenazi. Now notice the J, this is J1 and 2 for the sake of understanding. You got R's here. Remember that G, I, that R right there. Now, if you look at the Turkish, now look how similar. This is you can see this was a little larger, but that's not too much to think about, because we can actually go and look at some of the Turkish lines, and they actually are purely J. They are purely J, and we have them on this list. But I want you to look at this. I want you to take a good look at this. This right here is the Turks, right? J2, J1, right? This is Ashkenaz, J1, right? You can see what's going on there. You can see with this one's another one of the Turkish people. You can see the same things going on. You can see right here, the Kurds about the same, J2, right? J1, you got the E there. That's also important to know. They got E1B, that's actually E1B1B right there. That's gonna be sub-Saharan African. We can see that in some different ones. Iran Turks. Now, if you don't know where the Turks came from, they were chased by the Huns and all those around these areas. They was pushed out this way. They was over here. They was being chased. They were pushed down. But then when the Islamic conquest was going on, the Islam was over here. A lot of the Muslims, they had these areas. And then the Turks came in. They actually came from two angles. They came from above around this area, and they came from under around this area. So this little area right here, I forget exactly what what this is. I don't even know how you say that. Caps been this little water right here, this little form of water right here. Maybe someone knows how to pronounce it better than me. I'm not even gonna try to, as I don't know how to pronounce a lot of these little names, because a lot of these are actually Turkish names. They actually came in around this area, and they came in around this area, and they settled. A lot of them actually settled in this area. So they came around this area, and they came around this area, and they settled in this area. Now they also made their way down. They forced the original Ishmaelites down. They forced them down. They were all in these areas, and they forced them downwards, and they end up settling around these areas and these areas. And we actually talked about that on the map. Remember, we had looked at that on the map. In fact, let me open that for you and look at that. Right? This is actually what happened when the Turks came in there. They started to merge with people. And guess what line the Turks are? J1 and J2. J1 and J2 is the line of the Turks. All right? Let me open up a note here. Right? Because we talked about the Ishmaelites, right? Because a lot of people, when they think of the Ishmaelites, they think they're enemies. But remember, an Ishmaelite is just another person. If they convert to Christianity, if they accept the Messiah, they're nothing different than anyone else, right? Because if you be Christ, you're Abraham's seed, right? So always remember that. If you be Christ, you're Abraham's seed. As this is, when we do this study and this information, it's not to bring someone down. It's just to bring truth to life. That's all that it is actually for. It's to bring truth to life. I want to read you 3 quotes that are in agreement. I want to read you 3 quotes that are in agreement. Watch what it says here. Melech Frederick, king of Arabia Felix, right? Arabia being over here, right? You can see Saudi Arabia. And the Felix is actually going to be down here because it's going to be like the corner of it. Let me close some of these. I'll leave that there. I'll leave that there. I'll close this because we don't need that. But I want to show you that on a map, just to show you right here. This is a real map right here. Maybe I'll click it just to get a more clear see of it. This is not what I want to click. Let's go down a little bit and click it. I'm pretty sure I put the link. Or I just click this thing. Right there, okay. Let's look at this. Let's take a quick look at this map. The reason why I want you to look at this map is because I want you to understand the movement of peoples. These are stuff that you can't get on DNA tests, but you can get them in actual maps and understanding of history. You see this name right here, Sabi, right here. You see the Arabia Felix right there. That's what he's saying there. He's saying the king of the Arabia Felix of these people are going to move their people to what is called Libya. You see what this right here? Remember, I showed you on ancient maps that all of this used to be called Libya, right? Everything down here used to be called Libya, except underneath here used to be called Ethiopia, right? This was not called Africa, right? You can see Libya. This was all Libya. They actually called it Africa, Libya. And let's see how they actually got the name Africa and then Libya, right? Let's take a look. These are the things that you can't see in DNA tests, but you can see by historical reports. Let's go up a little bit. Let's read what it says right here. So it says, this king, right, moved the people he was a king in Arabia Felix, who conducted a people called Sabi into Libya. You heard what it just said there? He said he conducted a people called Sabi into Libya. So he moved his people of Arabia into Libya. So he moved his people into Africa. And guess how long ago that was? I don't want you to guess. I really don't want you to guess because you probably won't know exactly how long it was. But I'm going to show you. If someone knows exactly how long it was, then they're probably a scholar. It says, it is from the Sabians or Sabi. Talks about that the Moors came from, that the principal Moor tribe came from and everything. And it says it is believed that original Moors were Arabians. Now let's go down and let's look at another quote. Let's look at another historical quote. So you can see sometimes those people are actually talked up in the Bible. You can take a look here. The Sabians fell on them, right? When Job was there, he said the Sabians fell on them, right? These people. And he says, thus says the Lord, the labor. There's just some places where you see that. Let's go and go to a little historical note. So you can see what the name is, Sabi, right? Notice what it says what Sabi is, right? You can see Sabi, Sabians, right? It let us know a territory in Southwest Arabia, right? Also the name of one or more of the descendants of Noah, right? That's very important. And it just lets us know the predecessors of the tribe and of Ethiopian district, right? Sabi. Let's go down a little bit. Now, that's just the same quote. I'm just going to skip that one because this is the same book. That's the book. It was from that quote that I gave you earlier was from 1841, but he's actually quoting an older quote. Because if you read what he's saying here, let me show you what he's saying here. He says right here, I'm going to go down right here, in some degree to confirm the impression that they came originally from Asia, but without, watch what it says here, without enlarging upon these ancient statements. Notice he says this statement is an ancient statement that he says the king of Arabia Felix, who conducted a people called Sabi into Libya, right, made himself master of that country and established his followers there and gave it the name Africa, right? Let's go back to that map. This is a really old map. I forget exactly the age of it. I think it's on here. I just want to show you. This map is 1835 right here. This is 1835. I'm going to click this. But I'm going to show you. You see where they're right here? That's Sabi. And then you have the Arabia Felix. He moved these into Libya. And then this is why it's called Africa, Libya. Now, it's important to understand he would have had some still here and some over here. It's important to understand that. You can see Libya, right? This is actually Africa, Libya. That's why it's called Africa, Libya, because this whole area was called that. This was named by the Ishmaelites. You can see right there, he named it Africa, and that's where the Sabians were. And then notice what it also says, right? It let us also know that the Moors, right, who are the people who are called black, right? The Moors who are in Africa, the Moors of Africa, right? They are actually going to be, as it says right here, he says, but without enlarging upon these ancient statements, because this person is not just making them up. He's quoting ancient statements. And he's saying, but without enlarging upon these ancient statements, let it suffice to say that nearly certain grounds exist for the belief that the original Moors were Arabian. Now let's see what he's actually quoting here. You won't believe who he's actually quoting here. I didn't even know that he was quoting, so I want to show you this. This is Flavius Josephus, Book 1, Chapter 15. I'm going to read you the whole chapter. Now, I'm not the best reader, as my reader is kind of sleeping, but hope Job returns so that we can get some more work in. But let me work on this so I can show you this. Chapter 15, right? I'm going to show you what's happening here. Now, let's start here. Abraham, after he married, how you say that, Keturah, by whom 6 sons were born to him. Now, these are his 6 sons. I'm just going to skip a little down right here, right? You can see his sons right there, the names, right? This son right here is the one you want to note. This one right here. Ophern. I don't know if that's how you say it, Ophern. It says, now for all these sons and grandsons, Abraham, right? Because remember, Flavius Josephus is a 1st century historian. He's a Judean, right? He says, Abraham, contrived to settle them in colonies, and they took possession of basically this place. I'm not going to try to pronounce it. Toga. I'm not going to try. And the country of Arabia, the happy. You heard what he just said there? Abraham's sons. Now, which sons is he talking about? Now, if you don't know, Abraham had another wife. He had Sarah, and remember, he had a baby with Hagar, had Ishmael, but he had another wife. He had another woman, right? And he actually had children, and he moved them. And we know this because we can look at the scripture as well. He said he moved them eastward, and we're going to look at that. Now, for all these sons and grandsons, you can see right here, he moved them to this area, the country of Arabia, the happy. See that right there? Now watch what happens. As far as it reaches to the Red Sea, right? It is told about this. Remember that son that I was just showing you right here, Ophrin? This Ophrin that he made war against Libya. So Ophrin made war against Libya and took it. And that his grandchildren, right? How far is that? How later his grandchildren, right? Not his child, but his grandchildren. So later down the line, I don't know. I can't tell you exactly when, but I can tell you this: his grandchildren, when they inhabited it, called it from his name Africa. That's where Africa came from. Now, that's very important because when you hear that someone called African, do you know that they're actually calling them a son of Abraham when they call them African? Because this is actually who was in Africa, the sons of Abraham. And this is a historical quote. It goes on. It talks about some different things on how they actually gathered and everything. I'm just going to skip a few parts and jump right here. And if you want this, I'll put this link in the description so you can have it. It's right here. It says that this is just also talks about some of his sons were upper in Syria. I'm going to skip right here. And from the other 2, this is actually this right here is the son of Ophrin, right? Is Ophir. I don't know how you say that. Ophir and Japhrin. The country of Africa took his name. You see what it's saying there? It says from these 2, the country of Africa took his name because these men were basically reinforcements with Hercules. Now, that's another subject to go into. Hercules, is that talk about the mythical character? Obviously not. There was an actual guy who was reigning in Greece named Hercules when he fought against Libya, right? And then he also married pretty much Abraham's son's daughter. So this is important. Why is this important? because you got to know that the locations that we hear today, we don't actually know how they got their name, but this is actually important to know how Africa got its name. The reason why is important because I'm going to show you in a little bit. So also these people, you can know them as something called the Medianites, also a Medianite, right? You can see this person, that's his name. That person we were just talking about right there. Let's read it. It's in the scriptures. First Chronicles 1:32. Now the sons of Keturah, Abraham's concubine, you can see she bore these ones right here. Talks about the sons right there. That's what Flavius Josephus was just quoting. And it says right here, that's the one we want to look at. This person, right? Now, what happened to the Medianites? What happened to the Medianites? What did the scriptures say that happened to the Medianites? All the Medianites, the males were wiped out. What happened to the women of the Medianites? Israel took the women. Israel took the women and they became part of Israel. That's important to understand, right? So a lot of the Africans, they actually were merged together. A lot of them in that area were actually of Abraham. That's very important because we can actually prove that in DNA, that the DNA actually links all these things together, that they're all related. Now, what's important with this is that we all know that these are the sons of Abraham, right? We know these are the sons of Abraham, and we can see that this is a historical quote. There's another quote. I'm going to show you. This is just the same one that I was just reading right there. It just talks about right there. Now, for all these sons of and grandsons, Abraham conceived to settle them in colonies, and they took possession of, I don't know, Togo. I'm not going to try to pronounce that DYT. It says, in the country of Arabia the Happy, right? They took the area, the country of Arabia the Happy, as far as it reaches to the Red Sea, right? So they how much of the land did they have? They had all of this, Arabia the Happy, all the way to the Red Sea, all this. So they had all these areas as far as it reaches to the Red Sea. So it's saying all of this, all these things they had. Let's go back. All right, they have took Arabia the Happy. Now remember what Arabia means. Arabia in Egyptian actually means motherland, right? And what else? What else is so that became their motherland, Arabia. Also, Arabia, right? Well, Africa, my bad. Africa means motherland, and Africa also means, right? Divide, conquer, and have for yourself, pretty much. That's what Africa actually was to mean in their language. It was to mean that it's theirs. It's theirs for possession, right? It says the country of Arabia the Happy, as far as it reached the Red Sea, right? It just talks about that person we just talked about, how he went to Libya. Now that's important to understand because if we look on a modern map, Libya is a small area, but all of this was Libya. All of this was Libya. All of this. They, in fact, if you look up older maps, this was a mystery. Everything down here was a mystery. All of this was a mystery because there was a desert here. A lot of people didn't cross that desert. You can probably look at that desert, the Sahara Desert. You can probably see it right here. You can see it very clearly. This is a desert. So they settled in these areas because it was a little more green, especially over here in these areas. So you got different green areas around these areas and these areas, right? And this was a desert. So a lot of them, they didn't cross that desert until later on. Later on, they started to cross the desert. Now, let's continue on. I'm going to show you another quote. So that was Flavius Josephus. If you're not familiar with him, is a historian, right? First century. He was born a little bit after Messiah was born. He was a Judean. He was actually a Levite. He was actually a confirmed prophet as well. He was a confirmed prophet. So that's Flavius Josephus, a confirmed historian, Judean, right? And that's also this book is translated by, I don't know, William Wilson, which is 1737. I'm gonna show you another quote, as I think it's always good to have many witnesses. Now this one's more modern. This is from a university. You can see this is actually going to be in 2011, right? University of California. Go down a little bit. So here's a book right here. I'm going to show you now what this one says. It actually talks about the same subject. We'll go up a little bit. Biblical tradition. Let me actually go right here. Okay. Biblical tradition remain potent, undiminished in the Hellenistic era. As we have seen, strong elements in those traditions attest to, I'm going to skip a little down because it's not what I want to see. Let's see, where is it? Okay, so you see where it's talking about right here, Keturah. I'm going to go down a little bit and then read you what this says. So Keturah bore to him sons. So remember, we've seen that who his sons is and everything. It says he combined it with one of the countless legends of the Greek hero Hercules. Hercules. The latter story, also in different versions, has Hercules in one of his travels enter into Libya. See what it's talking about there? Libya, where he wrestled the giant, what's that? I'm not gonna say that. I'm not saying Antiochus into submission, right? He wrestled a giant into submission. I don't know how tall that giant was. I can tell you if the giant was 10 feet tall or 8 feet tall or something like that. I can tell you that. He wrestled into submission, thereby allowing Hercules to bring civilization to the wild and barbarous land of Africa. You see what it's saying there? That's very important. That's very important. Why? Because I'm going to show you something. The reason why this is important, because when we look at modern maps today and we use genetic studies, it actually confuses the truth. It actually confuses the truth because Libya is just right here, but that's not where it was long time ago. It was actually this whole thing was Libya, as you see right here. This whole thing was Libya. That's important to know because when you're doing, and now if you're someone that maybe takes genetic DNA tests or things like that, it's important to take note of that fact. It's important to take note of that fact that though DNA puts you in a pinpoint into an area, it's important to know the history behind that area. It's important to know that. Now, the reason why I want to tell you this is because when you actually look at the historical understandings of the peoples that are placed in areas, you can actually get a good understanding of what happened, what actually happened. Now, the reason why I was saying this is because if you look at these genetics, they're extremely similar. They're extremely similar. And the reason why they're similar is because there was a Turkish invasion in Israel. That Turkish invasion left a lot of people mixed. That's very important to understand. Because of that Turkish invasion, many people in Israel today are actually Turks. That is not a disrespectful saying. That's a truthful saying. Understand this. When someone is actually is boasting in their flesh and they're actually not what they are, the consequences can be very, very dire. Now, the reason why it can be very dire because if someone's saying that they're Israel and there's a promise concerning Israel, we have to understand those things because it's very serious. Few people actually understand the seriousness of the complexity of prophecy, right? There's actually a very, very complex understanding of prophecy that Judah is actually spread across the world right now. They're not actually in Israel. They actually are spread across the world. And the reason why that's important is that we don't need to have to, well, Sunday, I'm going to show you another study on who is actually Israel. But here, I want you to understand something. As we've been going over in a few different videos, we got a playlist, that little playlist that I have made, which is just talking about the Synthetic Sunday and things like that. That little playlist has a lot of historical information. It may be a little more than the common information that you'll see at church, but the information that you get here is going to be real information that's digging deeper than the average digger. That's very important to understand. Now, there's a lot of people that dig deep, but I want you to understand that we truly, this is all that we do is dig. It's all that we do. Now, I want to read this to you because I want you to understand what I'm saying is not just my own words. This is a actual, let me click it so you know that this is an actual DNA study. This is a real DNA study right here. Remember, DNA is a language. What is it actually doing? It's grouping people together. It's very important to understand that. Now, I want you to understand that the real Arabians were in Africa. They actually were pushed into Africa. And the people today, if they were Israeli, they would be related to the people who are in Africa. But the thing is, they're not. In fact, this study actually says that. Let me show you real fast right here, down right here. Watch what it says right here. In comparison with data available from other relevant populations in the region, because that's how DNA works. It groups people together into haplogroups, and then you can understand who's related. Jews were found to be more closely related to groups in the north of the Fertile Crescent, right? In the Fertile Crescent, Now, where's the Fertile Crescent? That's very important to know. Where's the Fertile Crescent? The Fertile Crescent is here, right? The Fertile Crescent. Now, you would say, oh, that's Israel. Well, that's important to know which direction it's saying of the Fertile Crescent. It's saying north, right? It's actually letting us know that in the north of the Fertile Crescent. Now, where's north of the Fertile Crescent? Up here. So all this is the Fertile Crescent. Between the Tigris and the Euphrates, that's the Fertile Crescent. They call it the Fertile Crescent because in between these two rivers was a very fertile land. And then up here, you can see Armenia, right? There's a study that actually says everyone in Armenia has exactly, understand when I say this, exactly the same DNA as anyone who's in Israel. When I say anyone, I'm saying the Ashkenazi or most of the what you just seen as I showed earlier, right? Let me show. They have exactly the same as this. The Armenians have exactly the same haplotype group. In fact, I want to make sure you see that I'm not going to quote myself, but I'm quoting actual historical information and genetic information, real information, because genetics, the language of genetics can be kind of complex, but not too complex. But I'm going to show you how it's in agreement with historical recordings. I'm going to show you how it's in agreement with historical recordings. But first, let this thing load because this is one of the longest notes I ever made. This note is very big. I'm going to just let it load a little bit. But let me just read you this quote while it's loading. I want to read this to you so you understand what this quote is. It says this. It just talks about a people that came from the east, and it says, so that it may be said that from Asia, right? Because the F's kind of look like the S's. This is an S, but it looks like an F. It says that Asia was the cradle of the human race, right? Many people thought the human race came from Africa. That's false. There's no outer Africa idea. Because remember where Moses landed? I mean, not Moses, Noah. Where did Noah land? In Mount Ararat, right? Mount Ararat is right around here, right? And this is where Ham, Shem, and Japheth split. Not in Africa. Not in Africa. Actually, Africa was pretty abandoned. Not a lot of people was actually in Africa, but they was actually here. And they split and they went to different directions. That's why Egypt was actually the head, mainly the head of Africa. So right here, they was basically like positioned right here, keeping this area posted pretty much. So they were right here, and this was Ham, Shem, and Japheth split. Now let's read this because this gets pretty deep right here. It says that Asia was the cradle of the human race and their origin country. It is from thence those swarms came. Now, what does he mean swarms? Now you got to understand the time frame that it's talking about. This is actually talking about the time of the barbarians. This part right here is talking about the time of the barbarians. And notice what it's saying here. From those swarms came, which filled Germany, because the barbarians was still a mystery. Now, where's Germany? Right? This is where remember what DNA tells us where they were. And now, if you don't know, have you ever heard of the Rhineland? How they settled in the Rhineland? This is actually would be the Rhineland, like Germany, Poland, stuff like that. All these areas. In fact, even these areas, you'll see some of them were in these areas. Even in Russia, some of them were over here. We got a lot of incidents of many of their genetics being in all these different areas, right? Germany. Now, notice what this quote is saying. Watch what this historical quote is saying right here. It's saying that those swarms filled Germany and the other western and northern countries, right? Western and northern countries, right? And watch this. And here you must know that the Hebrews, at least the modern Jews, right? Now, what does he mean by the modern Jews? I'll probably talk about that another time. Believe that the Germans owe their origin to him who in scripture is called Ashkenaz. Now, what are the odds of the people being in Germany being called Ashkenaz? Right? What are the odds? Who was the son of Gomer and coincidentally the grandson of Japheth. And hence it is that when they speak of the Teutons or the Germans, they call them Alkanazim in their language or Ashkenazim in their language. You heard what he just said there? Now that is loaded, now let me show you something. I'm going to show you a genetic report, what it says about the Armenians. Look what it says right here. In fact, now remember, I'm showing you actual real genetic information right here. I'm gonna actually click the thing so you can see that this is a real quote right here. This is where it's coming from. So you can see it's going to be real genetic information that we're going to be getting. Right? We can even go to about just to make sure, get a little idea of who they are and whatnot. So these are real names, right? They're going to be people that's going to be studying these things in the laboratory, different people, right? Watch what it says here. Let's go back here. And let's go down. Up right here. Okay. In fact, watch what they say here. In fact, there is no major Y chromosome haplogroup found among the Ashkenazi Jews that are not found also among the Armenians, and vice versa. What does that mean, vice versa? He's saying the Ashkenazis are Armenians and the Armenians are Ashkenazi. He's saying they're the same. And in fact, it says, which would indicate that the source population of these groups, while diverse to begin with, because they say that one is Jewish and one is Armenian, were in geographic proximity. Now, what did that historical report just say? Didn't it just say that there was Ashkenazim in Germany? And didn't it just say their own genetic report says they was in geographic proximity? That's the problem with DNA tests. DNA tests cannot tell you what historical information can tell you. But DNA tests can confirm to you the haplogroup of what grouping the people actually are in. Let's go down a little bit. And we actually get the understanding also from the mtDNA, right? We actually know for a fact that the mtDNA also confirms that they're European, right? Again, not just saying this. This is actually a confirmed quote, right? I'm not just saying this is actually a confirmed quote. Let me actually pull this one up. Or this one. This is, make sure this is the one I want to show you. Let me read you a little more understandings from the language of DNA. Remember, all they do is give you haplogroups. Now, here's another studies right here. There's going to be another study, as I can show you right here. This is real. So it's going to talk about some different studies and everything. This is actually a mind-blowing study. If you've never seen this one, it's actually a study where they actually found out that a lot of the Jews, they say they come from Italy. They seem like they were more upwards and things like that. Let me show you something. What it says right here. It says, if being Jewish is determined as genetically descending from the Israelites, though the material line, through the material line or the Y chromosome, or in this sense, the material line being the female line, because that's actually how they say that they're Israel. But I'm going to show you, even by their female line, that's also going to show that they're European. When we say European, it just means like Upper Europe. Now understand, for the sake of understanding, I want everyone to understand all love, but truth, all love, but truth. I want you to understand that. But let's go back and understand what it's saying here. If being Jewish is defined as genetically descending from the Israelites through the woman's line, then many Ashkenazi Jews fail the test according to this data. You heard what he just said there? This is a genetic study. He just said, if it's through the mother's line, many Ashkenazi Jews fail the test according to this data, right? And the person did the test. He says, Richard acknowledges that the work is likely to be controversial. Now, I'm going to show you that this is actually true. I'm going to show you that someone who's actually Ashkenazi admits this. He's an Ashkenazi geneticist who studies these things. Or I don't know if he's a geneticist. Let me make sure. This is him, Dr. John Entine. He just basically is going to talk about this. He's actually Ashkenazi. But watch what he says here. I'm going to skip right to 12. Right here. Now watch what happens here.
Occurs back down to 20,000, and it's during that period that the core of Jewish ancestry was formed. As for the female DNA, this is interesting. I have a startling statement to make, which may be that none of you here who are Ashkenazi Jews may be under the laws of Israel Jewish. That is true by DNA, and this is going to present some fascinating theological problems. The reality of it is that most of female DNA that they've done testing of traces back to European populations. Whether they were pagan or Christian, it's not clear, but they almost certainly were not Semitic. There is a sizable percentage of DNA on the female side that does trace back to the Middle East, but the majority of it traces back to Europe and seems to indicate that the pattern of Jewish communities, Ashkenazi Jewish communities, was traders or middlemen, nobility aides, whatever, either brought up by the aristocracy or who wandered there because there was a sense of opportunity during brief periods of openness, and they took on local wives. Now, if they went through a formal conversion process, and that's your genetic line, you are Jewish under Israeli law. If they didn't, if they just took a local woman as their wife and that local woman was pagan or Christian, they didn't go through a formal conversion process. If the rabbis of Israel find out about it, you have a little bit of a problem.
You heard what he just said there? Notice that now understand, he's Ashkenazi. Watch what he says. Most of us who are Ashkenazi Jewish, that's what he's going to say. He's going to say most of us. That's how you know he's unbiased, because he's also Ashkenazi Jewish. Watch what he says here. But he's going to say a line here. I want you to listen closely. He's going to say a line here and understand this is practice. Understand when I say this. I want you to really understand when I say this. The next following thing that's going to be said is actually a statement that was made by the geneticist. I'm going to show you that statement before he says it, so you understand that this was a practice statement. This is what he says right here. So the person who found this out, he acknowledged that the work is likely to be controversial. Let me make sure you can hear me. All right. So he found out it was going to be controversial. He says, I anticipate some resistance to our conclusions in certain quarters. Why do you think he's going to have resistance to this truth? Because to say the Ashkenazi Jews are not Jews is super controversial. It's super controversial, but it's the truth. Watch what he says. One way to resolve this. Watch this. This is how you, and this is a lie that's starting to spread. Watch this. One way to reconcile his team's finding with those of other researchers, he says, is to assume. Notice, quote unquote. Note that word right there. Assume. Assume. Pay attention to that word. Is to assume that the founder of the male, now they're going to convert to the male. Pay attention. That the founder of the male Ashkenazi lineages were indeed originally from the Middle East, but that this material line, which is the mother's DNA, that the mother's line arose in Europe much earlier. The European women then converted to Judaism after male Jews moved to the continent, establishing the Ashkenazi lineage that we see today. Is that true? No, it's an assumption. In fact, it's a false assumption. Now, watch what he'll even say it himself. He'll say they'll be Semitic, and they actually merge with the European women. But watch what he says here.
The reality of it is that
the reality of it is
most of us today who are Ashkenazi are probably the descendant of a Semitic Jewish male and either a convert or a Christian or pagan who didn't convert, but quickly was assimilated into the small but soon growing Jewish community, raised their children as Jews, but if you ultimately trace it back, they're not so Jewish.
So if you ultimately trace it back, they're not so Jewish. Now understand this. What's the problem here? Is that there is truth that is found, but a lie is manifesting. Do you understand what this means? This means they're not even allowing the people to test to see who are the real Jews. Now, I'm going to bring a study out Sunday. I just want to show you one thing from that study. Just allow me to just humor me. Humor me and take a look at this study I'm going to show you. And I'm going to guarantee you, I'm going to show you who the Sephardic Jews are without a doubt. You have never seen, few people seen this study. Few people, very, very few people actually seen this study. I'm not going to go over this whole note, but I'm going to jump right to the end and I'm going to show you something that you probably never seen before, or you probably heard of it, but you probably never seen the actual information. But I'm going to show you something that you may have never seen before, and it's groundbreaking. It's groundbreaking that you probably never seen it, but it's groundbreaking. I'm going to go down to a real genetic study. Now watch this study. In fact, there's two of them. There's two studies like this. It's going to be about the Sephardic Jews. Now, what does Sephardic mean? It means the Spanish Jews, Jews of Spain. the Jews of Spain that were pushed into Africa. Now, if you don't know about São Tomé and Príncipe and all that stuff and the islands that was over there, it's an island. If you go to Africa, in Spain, if you know the story, the Jews were exiled from Israel, right? And they were sent into Spain. When they was in Spain, there was a decree that was made. Long story short, they were sent down into Africa, right? From Seville. They were sent down into Africa. This is without a doubt. This is historically confirmed. There's no debating that. Then when they were sent down into this area, it's very important that later on they actually sent them to an island. That island, I just want to make sure I find exactly where that island is because it's hard to see it. Right here, you see this little island right here, São Tomé and Príncipe, right here. This island housed Jews. Is not that, understand when I say this. It is without a doubt that Jews were on this island. I'm going to show you now a genetic study. All right. This is a real genetic study. This is the study right here. This is a PDF. So I don't know if it would open. So this is the PDF right here. So you can see this is going to be a real team that's going to be doing this. Here's the journal, the page. I'll show you. This obviously they closed it because there's a lot of covering up going on with this thing. There's a lot of covering up, but I'm going to show you this study. I'm going to show you something. All right. You can look this up yourself and you can get the understanding on this. It's a real genetic study that few actually know of. Watch what it says right here. Let me actually click this so you can see this. I'm going to show you who the real Jews are, the real Sephardic Jews, without a doubt. I'm going to show you something. Okay. You can see right here, it just talks about where they got the people from. It says, São Tomé Island, I'm going to give you the introduction. Watch what it says here. São Tomé Island were probably uninhabited at the time of the Portuguese discovery in 1471. So that means no one was on this island. When the Portuguese took this island, no one was here. No one was in this island. They didn't even know these islands exist, right? No one was in these islands, right? And then guess what they did? It says, soon after that, the first settlement took place in 1486, right? By this person who took with him many Jews. You heard what he just said there? Many Jews. Now, it's important to understand that there was 2,000 young children there. Now, there was children that were taken there. Now, what they're going to do, they were forcefully baptized. They were taken from their families. They were forcefully baptized and sent to these areas, right? And they had to leave their Jewish faith, right? So I'm going to show you something that a lot of people that had got genetically tested there, you can see right here a little bit of information. You can see his email, some information to them things. This is a real genetic study, Institute. You can see the Institute, University, this university right there. Let me show you. Let me show you something. Those Jews that was on that island, they settled on that island. They knew that they settled there. It's without a doubt. I'm going to show you right here. Here's a study right here. This is going to be, I'm going to show you this, that those what the kids look like, but that's probably a little too soon. Let me show you something. That's probably too soon to show you that. But let me show you this. For some, it may be too soon. Some may already be familiar with this, but watch and pay attention. Just watch. You never see nothing like this. It's a real genetic study. Watch this. This is the real children. I'm going to read this to you. Right? Haploco group composition obtained for the Jewish descents. You see what? Not just understand it. From the Jewish descendants from São Tomé. Right? Remember where São Tomé is? Right here. That's where they were sent. Let me just close this, as I don't want too many things open so it get too confusing. You see where you see who they're testing here? The Jews of São Tomé. Now watch what they say here, right? They had 240 individuals, right? That's very important. They didn't have J and T in them, right? They say this. They didn't have the so-called Jewish line. And now if you remember, J and T are actually in the Turks. We already went over that in a deep study. Now watch what it says here. It just talks about mainly they were actually African, but let me show you something right here, up here. Finally, it just talks about, they had a mix of European in them and everything. But notice what it says actually right here. They could say that they had a large portion of African descent in them. Now, the thing about it is that line that they had in them was E1B1A. This is actually now I'm just going to show you this because I want you to understand what was in them. and the Jews on that island. You see what it's pointing to right here, a large portion right here? This is E1B1A or M2. This is E1B1A or M191 right here. Now, if you notice, they also have a large part of European in them. Why? Because they were raping the kids on the island. They were doing all types of stuff to them on the island. They were doing all types of stuff. Now, if you know the history behind it, you already know what happened to the people there, right? You can see that the female line is still about the same, except there's a little piece that maybe they mingled in with one of the European females. So there's a little bit of European female in there. So you can see right there, there's a little European female right there. And you can see a little mix. This is actually showing a little bit of the mix of the European in them. It's not that much. It's a little bit. You can see right here. It even talks about it. It talks about the percentage of them in them right there. Let me go. I don't want to look at that. Well, actually, okay, so let me show you another one. I'm going to show you a different one. I'm going to go over here, right here. Now watch this. This is getting a little more into what's in them. So this is their Y chromosome. This is just a tree. You can see right here, E3A, that's M2, E1B1A. Now notice how much percentage there is. Now this right here is actually 84%. You see that point, that 0.842, that's actually 84%. Well, probably 85, but let's see, it's 84 if they round it up. You can see right here, the most frequent haplogroup found is E3A. That's 84.2. So they put it exactly 84.2. So 84.2, so you can see 84.2, which is in them. Let's go down a little bit. Remember, these are the Jews on the island that they were testing. It says the most frequent haplogroup is E3A, which is 84.2. Also the most widespread clad in sub-Saharan African. They call them sub-Saharan African, but that has to be understood. You got to eat the meat, spit out the bone. This is bone right here. Now, what are we actually looking at here? Because we can actually connect this with actual historical information, which I'm not going to do right now for the sake of understanding. If you want to see that, we'll do that Sunday. I'm going to have a beloved brother that's going to help me out because I'm not the best reader, but I am a very deep studier. I do study these things very well for the sake of understanding. But you can see right here, this is actually going to be that phrase. These are actually going to be the real Hebrews. It says, and by far the most frequent one in West Africa population. West African populations. That's important to remember. Remember, we went over what Africa is and how it got that name and everything. And remember, there's a lot of mixing. There was mostly Shemites down there, right? The particular, you can see right here, I'm going to go up right here. I'm going to talk about this. You will see it in the Bantu speaking people for the sake of understanding. And there's also a historical quote that actually tells you that the Anglo women were merging with the Jews. Now they will say the Anglo women were dark skinned. They were dark skinned and they were actually Shemites. The Anglo women were actually Shemites. They're 90% Shemites, right? It actually lets us know defining by M2 mutation is most common among Angloros. How you say that? The Anglo women, pretty much, the Anglo people and everything. It just lets you know who all has that in them. And then it just talks about the second common one, which we talked about, that RB, which is that male. And now understand that's not a J, that's R1B. Now, why? Because a lot of the Romans, a lot of the people that was in there, a lot of the ones for Portugal, and a lot of them were actually R1B. A lot of them were, a lot of the settlers. And it says a typical haplogroup from Western Europe. How did a haplogroup from Western Europe get to this island? Do you know that almost none of them in these areas have that in them? But these ones do? Let's look at this. I want you to understand this, right? The second most common one, it says from Western Europe, most likely carried by the Portuguese settlers, right? Remember how I told you the Portuguese settled there? Most likely carried by Portuguese settlers, suggesting their genetic contribution to this population. You heard what it just said there? So who did they bring? Remember what they just said is that it's historically confirmed that they brought Jews to this island. It's very important to understand that. And the Jews were still there, so that when they did genetic tests, they did not just confirm that they're Jews, they confirmed that they were taken there by the Portuguese. That's very important to understand, that these are the individuals that were taken there, the Portuguese. But what are the key words that we just seen there? Sub-Saharan African. Stuff like that is going to throw you off. Stuff like that is going to throw you off. But if you actually pay attention to all the historical evidence, all of it, you're going to come to an understanding of what actually happened. Here's a little story of the children of São Tomé, the real Sephardic Jews. You see right here, this study seeks to explore the little known story of the Sephardic Jewish orphans of São Tomé. You heard what he just said there? And what do they look like? This is São Tomé. These are what they look like. These are the Sephardic Jewish orphans of São Tomé. You hear what I'm saying here? These are the real Sephardic Jewish orphans of São Tomé. These ones are the real Sephardic Jewish orphans of São Tomé, the children of São Tomé. These are they. That's very important to understand, right? You see what this study is on? Very important. Maybe we'll touch on this. I'm not going to touch on it now, right? Notably, many African Americans talks about that. They have a portion of Sephardic Jewish history. Florida International University, 2019. If you want to see that Sunday, we're gonna go over these things. It's gonna be very deep, like you've never seen before, or maybe you've seen before. But we'll go over some things that a little deeper in genetics. Now, remember, again, one more time, what does DNA tell us? It tells us our haplocode group, on what grouping, and a little bit of the background story, a little history to what happened to the people. It does not tell you who the people are in a geographic location. That is what historical quotes are for. That's what historical quotes are for. Historical quotes are for quoting to find out. Now, it's important to understand that this is without a doubt a great piece of evidence just to understand a little bit of something. I'm going to close that and close this. Now, going back into what you see here. What did we just confirm by some of the genetics? That there's a cover-up, right? Here's another one. Here's another one from Nature. This is a more famous genetic study. This is one that most people know, the Nature Communications, right? You can see this one right here. I'm going to show you something that they talk about here. It says, component in Ashkenazi ancestry, basically the female DNA, mainly traced back to now understand this. Listen to when I say this. They didn't convert. Listen to me when I say this, family. I want you to understand when I say this. The Jews didn't go up here and marry women. No, that did not happen. What actually happened is they were originally up here, and the women are ancient women. Ancient women. Understand when I say this, ancient women. Listen to what they say here, because remember, there's different levels to how you can study things. And this person, these studied a little deeper to see if they were modern women, if they just maybe they just met them. But no, they said they trace back to prehistoric European, Western Europe, right? These and this is important to understand, that is actually letting us know that they, right here it says the conversion and the formation of the Ashkenazi communities, and it just talks about how they pretty much mixed together. In fact, they say this, and represents a significant step in the detailed reconstruction of the Ashkenazi genealogical history. See what he's just saying there? It's letting you know that the results are actually bringing forth an understanding that they may need to rewrite some historical quotes, right? Modern historical quotes, not ancient historical quotes, but modern historical quotes. Now I'm gonna close this and let's go. I'm gonna close this one too. And we looked at that. I'm gonna go over here. Let's look again at this. So you see how the Y chromosomes are very similar here? Notice who is also similar to, right? They have 60 to 70% of their genetics in the, I want you to read this. Now, if you don't know who the Scythians is, 6 male Scythian samples, from the, what's that, Kurgans, the Kurgans. And if you know who the Kurgans is, that's the leaders, right? He's saying from the leaders of the Scythians. It's saying they had that R1b M269 in them. That's the same thing that's found in the Philistines. The Scythians, now who are the Scythians? They were a group of people that were more settled in these areas. They were a group of people that settled up over here, right? The Scythians. I think I have a picture of them, of a map where they are right here. So you can see right there, I'll just click it to give you a clear look. This is the Scythians. They were a people that were way up here. Now you see the Alans right there, those are Turks. The Alans right there, they also have the Alans in them. They also have the Y chromosome, the Alans in them, right? The Ashkenazi, they have the same Y chromosome in them, the same one, which the Alans have a pure state of them in it. They have a pure state of them in it. You can see right here, they have the leaders in them. That's important because this is ancient DNA. This is actually ancient DNA from the Bronze Age, a long time ago, right? Very, very long time. In contrast, six Scythian samples, right? They found that in them, the R1, right? That's very important. I'm gonna go down a little bit. So remember what I said right here? This quote right here. Go down right here. You can see where it says that in comparison with data available from other relevant populations in the region, Jews were found to be more closely related to groups in the north of the Fertile Crescent, right? The Fertile Crescent, Kurds, Turks, Armenians, than their Arab neighbors. Go down a little bit. You can even see the result yourself. You can see how they're closely related. How do they know they're closely related? Because here's Turks. You can see Iraq Jews, the Turks, the Ashkenazi, they're all related. See how what it's showing you here? It's showing you that they're all related, even to the Portuguese. Even to the Portuguese. You can see what's going on there. Very related. So that's what their results also found, that they were very related. Here's another one. Here's another genetic study, Science Direct. Remember, genetic information, it doesn't tell us geographic information. It tells us what grouping peoples are, right? In comparison with data available from other relevant populations in the region, Jews were found to be more closely related to groups in the north of the Fertile Crescent, Kurds, Turks, Armenians, than their Arab neighbors. So he's saying that they don't have the same mix or the same things as their Arab neighbors. Why? Because the Arabs are the real Arabs. Now, a lot of Arabs, remember how I did that study on the E1B1B? A lot of the Arabs are actually pure Arabs, especially the ones that are darker skinned. They are going to be more the pure Arabs. But a lot of Arabs nowadays, they're going to be kind of mixed with the Turks. They're still going to be kind of mixed with the Turks a little bit. They're going to be kind of mixed with the Turks. But a lot of them in Palestine, they're actually real Arabs. A lot of them actually have a lot of Arab Y chromosome in them. A lot of them, even though they're light skinned. But the real Arabs, they were originally darker skinned. And that's quoted in historical quotes. But right here, we actually see who are the Ashkenazi related to. Remember, we had looked up that information, right? That's why I said historical information is going to give you more understanding on geographic location, right? And go up a little bit. Well, I think I passed it. Right here. Remember I showed you that? How it told you that a lot of them, the Ashkenazim was in Germany, right? A lot of the Germans are Ashkenazim, and we actually know a lot of the Germans are related to them. A lot of them are actually related, right? Let's go over here. And that can also be shown as well for the sake of understanding. But look what it says right here. The Jewish population in this cluster, the Ashkenazim. Ashkenazim? What does that sound like? Ashkenazim. Why did he just call them Ashkenazim? Does that sound familiar? That term Ashkenazim? Let's look. It says right here, right? It says, and hence it is that when they speak of the Teutons or Germans, they call them Alkanazim in their language, or Ashkenazim in their language. You see that right there? Let's go and take a look right here. It says the Jewish populations in this cluster, the Ashkenazim, were closest to the South European populations, specifically the Greeks and also the Turks. You heard what I just said there? How many evidences do we have to bring forth for everyone to understand that there's a lie going on in the world today, and it's okay to say that that lie is going on? Let's stop being in a controversy and not accepting the truth. This is the study that I just showed you here. You can see they know this stuff, family. I'm trying to show you this so that you understand that these things, this is the type of things that's going on in the world today. I want you to understand that the world we're living in, believe it or not, is topsy-turvy. It's topsy-turvy. That's what's going on in the world today. You see what's going on? This is how DNA speaks. DNA is speaking in this way to link these groups together, right? You see, and also the Turks. So how are they related with the Turks? Ask yourself that. How can someone who is a pure, remember, they're supposed to be pure from Abraham. And understand, I'm not just saying this, but plenty of geneticists are also saying this. Plenty of them. Plenty of geneticists are also saying this, right? And I had showed you that. And we can look at it ourselves. Look how similar these are. It is, and understand, look at them. I want you to really look. I really want you to look at these and look how similar they are. You see this? These are the same people, beloved. I want you to understand this. These are the same people. In fact, they are confirmed to also be the people that converted to Judaism, the Khazars. It is without a doubt, is no way to deny it. It's already been confirmed by the Library of Congress. I remember we showed that in the previous videos where I said, indeed, they are Turks. We made two of them, 2 videos on it for the sake of understanding. Don't miss them, because that type of information, if you miss it, understand this. If you miss it, you may not know what's going on in the world today. And there might be a surprise when Yah comes. Yah will come, but it's important to know what's really going on. Now, this is a truth that blessed are those who support the truth. Blessed are those who support the truth, because you will be blessed. You will indeed be blessed. So I wanted to show you this because we can actually look at people who we know 100% are Turks, and they compare them to it because at J1 and J2, 99% family. Listen to me when I say this. 99% in the Avars. Now we can talk about all these other ones and whatnot, but 100%, if you understand history, you know who the Avars are, right? The Avars are 100% without a doubt Turks. They're 100%, right? Here's just a little right here. Here's the genetics and everything. You can see on these different genetics and everything. But I'm gonna go down and show you something, and you can see this is very high. That's extreme. This is extreme. This is extremely high, right? I'm gonna show you something with the Avars. Let me confirm to you that they're Turks just by using maps. Watch what happens here. I want to show you this because I believe it's important. Families, Semitic. That's right. That's right. Even their language. The how you say on my page on I'll just type on where I just typed where it says this page. On that page right there on D Tree for Yah, on that page there's a video that they listen to me when I say this. They took a video down. This video was a linguistic study. Linguistic is a study of language. There was a linguistic study that studied the language of Yiddish, and they confirmed that Yiddish originated up here, not down here and moved up here. It actually originated up here as a Slavic language, right? What they say the Slavs. Now look at the Avars. You can see the Alans came in. They would have settled in this area. The Avars came in too. You see the Avars? See where they came from? The Avars, and they also came with the Khazars. You see right there? So this is 552 80. This is 679 80. They were the same people. These are actually the same people. Now someone would say, oh, well, they're different people. Well, they're confederacies. They're different confederacies. But that's like if I took a bunch of people who are 100% Polish, and there was 100 of us, 100 Polish people, and I put them in 10 groups and gave them 10 different names. There's not 10 different people, right? If I take 100 people and put them in 10 different groups and 10 different names, they're the same people, right? That's basically what that is. So you can see now the Huns are a different people. Some people try to say that the Huns are the Turks. That's false. The Huns are a different people. They push the Turks out. The Huns pushed the Turks out, right? And they settled in these areas. Bye-bye. I think my little boy. All right. So you see right here, the Avars, they came in and they settled in this area. These are without a doubt Turks. There's no doubting that. That's important to understand. And then they settled in these areas. That's why you get the cognate. And that's also a historical quote that confirms that. Let me read you that historical quote because I think it's important to know some of these things. Let me actually open this and read you this historical quote. So this quote is quoting something from a long time ago. This is actually going to be the conquest of a continent or the expansion of races in America, 1933. Watch what it says here. I'm going to read you what it says here. Right here, you see, remember what that other one said? When it said right here, so it may be said that Asia was the cradle of the human race and their origin country. It was from thence those swarms came and filled Germany. Now watch this, it's going to confirm this as well. It's in agreement. Watch what it says. The great mass of immigrants from South Poland and Russia and all these different areas and whatnot. How you say that? Galatia, and Russia were, look what it says here, Ashkenazim Jews. What did he just say right here? Hence, it is that when they speak of the Teutons or the Germans, they call them Ashkenazim or Ashkenazim in their language. You heard what I just said there? This just said that they were Ashkenazim Jews. We also see that in the genetic reports. They call themselves Ashkenazim. It says, we're Ashkenazim Jews, descendants in part of Alpine Khazars. You heard what he just said here? And this is not even the 13 tribes, family. This is not even the book of the 13 tribes. This is a whole different book. It just said that they're Khazars. This is a whole different book with a Mongol admixture. So they're mixed with Mongolian, right? Admixture, who entered the Eastern Ukraine from Asia in early countries of our era. Many of the Khazars and their kin, because that's a classic thing that Turks will say, their kin, were converted were converted by Jewish missionaries, right? And in fact, there's another historical quote that says they were Persian Jews that converted the Khazars. That was Persian Jews that converted the Khazars by Jewish missionaries, and they formally accepted Judaism in 740 AD. This is without a doubt that the Khazars converted in 740 AD. Now watch what it says about this group. Remember how it said the Ashkenazim Jews, right? From Poland. And where's Poland? Where they come from? Poland, they came from this area, from Poland to Germany, right? That's why you get the Rhineland ideas, right? We don't need this now. We're going to close these. We don't need those. All right, let's go back here. Watch what it says here. It is doubtful whether there is a single drop of the old Palestinian Semitic-speaking Hebrew blood among these East European Jews. You heard what I just said there? One more time. It is doubtful whether there is a single drop of the Palestinian Semitic-speaking Hebrew blood among these East European Jews. They are essentially a non-European people. The language they speak is, remember what this is? Let me just zoom in right here. Yiddish. If you want to get a little understanding on the linguistics of that, definitely see it. It's on that page with D-Tree for Yah. So right there it says they speak Judish, or I don't know how you even say that. It says, or Yiddish is a corrupt German, wow, right? Of the, how you say that? I don't know how you say that. Franconen. I'm gonna say dialect mixed with Slavic and Hebrew elements, which fact strengthens the tradition of a large migration. Now listen to why I say this. Not just genetics is confirming this, not just historical evidence is confirming this, but linguistic studying actually confirmed this as well. That's why he's saying the fact of the Yiddish language, he says, which fact of the Yiddish language strengthens the tradition of a large migration of German Jews into Poland in the Middle Ages. It may be that the strain of these German Jews has died out. The strain of these German Jews has died out, leaving only their language behind. Now you see what he just said there? It may be. Did they die out? No, they did not die out. We still see them today, right? It says, it may be that the strain of these German Jews has died out. It has not died out, leaving only their language behind. But in any event, the Polish Jews are now distinguishedly Alpine, a mixture of Slavs of the Asiatic invasion of Russia. You heard what he just said there? It just talks about them, the migration and the movement and how many and all these things and whatnot. These are exact facts, right? Because they speak Yiddish. It's very important. And this is in agreement with this. This is an agreement, in complete agreement. And that is actually how you actually find out where someone actually is from, by the actual real genetic information. Now, is that hate? No, that's love. It's not anti-Semitic because they're not Semitic. That's anti-Japhetic. I don't think so. If it's anti-Japhetic, I think it's bringing them to themselves, to be honest with you. I think it's bringing someone to the consciousness of who they are. It's kind of like when someone says, if you know someone's a male and they say, I'm a female, and he says, call me a female, you're a liar if you call them a female. It's not right for you to lie to say someone's a female. It's the same thing like if someone's a sinner and they're a sinner and they say, don't call me a sinner, you're lying if you say they're righteous. You're lying if you say you're righteous. In fact, there's a saying in the scripture that says, whoever calls whoever calls a wicked man righteous gets a blemish, right? It's actually a bad thing if you call a righteous person or a wicked person righteous. So it's the same concept to cause something in confusion. It's the same thing, right? If someone's Hamite, you don't call them Japheth. If they're a Shemite, you don't call them a Hamite, right? Because what you're going to see on Sunday, I'm going to show you 100% that many historians, many people actually knew there's a difference between Ham and Shem, though they look the same. There's a difference between them. Though the Ham is the progenitor of all the dark-skinned races, he's not the progenitor of the Negroes. But that's another topic to talk about. Let me just show you this, because I think it's important to remind ourselves of the truth of the matter, right? Because I'm saying this because I seen an Ashkenazi completely boast in these things, but I wonder, do he actually know the truth enough to speak the truth in the matter of the truth? Because if someone's boasting in the flesh, they better surely be what they are. That's very important to understand. They got to surely be what they actually are, right? But some aren't what they are. Now, remember how we confirmed that they're Armenian? I want to show you one more. I want to show you one more thing. Let me show you one more thing. Another confirmation. I'm going to give you now. What I'm going to show you is their own confirmation. Their own confirmation, right? Their own confirmation. I'm going to show you that they themselves actually say this. I wanted to see what his brother is saying. Truth, always love, hence, amen. This individual, this very wise is one is saying. Very wise. Definitely listen to that one in the chat. He's saying some interesting things. Let me show you something real fast. I think it's important. I think it's important to know this, because what I'm going to show you, this is going to be the last thing. What I'm going to show you is they themselves admitting to themselves that they are Ashkenazi and that they are actually of Japheth and they are not who they say they are. I'm going to show you it. They themselves say this, and it's going to be in a Jewish library. It says, in fact, there is no major Y haplotype group. Pay attention to what's going to be said here. There is no Y haplotype group. That means every male in the Ashkenazi is also found in the Armenians. So you're saying there, in fact, there is no major Y haplotype group found among the Ashkenazi Jews that are not found among Armenians, and vice versa, which would indicate the source population of these groups, while diverse to begin with, were in geographic proximity. Where are the Armenians, right? Where Georgia is, Armenia. So he said they were in geographic proximity. That's what he said. They were in geographic proximity. Now, let's see what they say about the Armenians. Remember, vice versa. So an Ashkenazi is an Armenian, and an Armenian is an Ashkenazi. They are the same people. That is according to genetics, to DNA. Now, watch what it says right here. I'm going to read this to you. This is Armenia, the Jewish library. Now, if you haven't seen this before, I remember I had showed this before when I showed about that this is their own writings, right? We had talked about this a little bit. You can see some big names on this. Now, watch what they say here, right? You can see right here, this is Armenia. To get it a little clear on the map, right there. So remember, they're exactly the same. Now, watch what they write about the Armenians. How ignorant it is for them to write this. But I want you to pay attention to what they write right here. Watch this. In the past, Armenia has been connected with the biblical Ashkenaz. It's over. It's over. They just said that Armenia is connected to biblical Ashkenaz. But let's continue reading. The Armenians are termed the Ashkenazi nation. It's over. It's over with. What are we still continuing on? Do you see what they just said about the Armenians? And this is not a word that we don't see today. The Ashkenazi, the Armenians are termed the Ashkenazi nation in their literature. According to this tradition, the genealogy in Genesis 10:3 extends to the population west, and it just talks about some of those things. It says, in Jewish usage, Ashkenaz is sometimes equaled with Armenia. You heard what he just said there? It said in their own tradition, he said Armenia is equal with Ashkenaz. That's what they just said there. Guess what else it says? In addition, it sometimes covered neighboring, I don't know how you say that, I'm not going to try to pronounce it. And this is what I want you to see. And also Khazaria. Now, what did they just say there? He just said the Armenians covered the area where the Khazars were. It's not done yet. I'm going to show you what else they say. It's just talk about the territory of the Slavs and neighboring forest tribes considered by Arabs descendant of Khazaria. You heard what he just said there? As well as Eastern and Central Europe and Northern Asia. Armenia is linked with Uz. Oh, what did he just say? Remember, this is in the Jewish library, what I just showed you. Understand this. It's not me talking. This is the Jewish library. They just said Armenia is linked with Uz. Who is Uz? Edom. Now understand when I'm saying this. This is them saying this. This is them that's saying this. Now, when it comes to are they Edom, I don't know. I don't 100% know because that is on genetic information and I don't have enough historical information to bring that forth. But they themselves say it. They say Armenia providences made the Togarm identity, or how you say it, Togarm, identify it with the daughter of Edom that dwellers in the land of Uz. Did you just see what it just said there? Some of you probably could read better than me, but you can see right here, the provinces made by Togarm identify it with the daughter of Edom that dwellers in the land of Uz. They just said that they're Edom. They themselves just said that they're Edom. That's what they just said. Let's go on. Let's continue on and see what it says right here. It just talks about Armenia and the land of Turkey and all these different things. What it says, watch what it says about the Khazars. The Khazars were sometimes credited with Armenian origin. Did you just hear what he just said there? Now, if you don't know the Khazarian theory, it's not a theory anymore. It's a fact. It's without a doubt, it's a fact. The Khazars were sometimes credited with Armenian origin. It says this is stated by 7th century Armenian bishop and historian Sabios and the Arab geographer. I don't know how you say that. I'm not going to try to pronounce that. It says, you see this? And it goes on. You can see right here. The term Armenia often includes much of Anatolia, right? Anatolia is Turkey. It says otherwise referred to the cities of which is now Turkey for the sake of understanding. It's basically everything that I just showed you from the beginning. All of it is harmonized with the Jewish library. All of it is harmonized with the Jewish library. You see what I just showed you there? Because what did the genetic facts just say? Remember, what I'm showing you here is a real genetics right here. Armenians and Ashkenazis are the same. This is that thing that I just showed you right here. If anything you want here, for the sake of understanding, let me know and I'll give it to you. I'll let you have these things because these things are facts. You can see that they're doing real studies on these things, right? This is a real group. Click this. You can see just a little bit about them, right? Providing service to the truth of studying things in the laboratory, right? Let me close this. The Jewish library, that's what I just showed you. Everything that you just seen there is in the Jewish library about Armenia. Everything that I just showed you. Everything that I just showed you is written in here. Everything. Everything that I just showed you. Besides the earlier stuff. But everything that I just showed you in that reading, that was in the Jewish library. Now the problem is this. Why are they lying? Why do they have to lie? Why do they have to lie about these things? Why can't they just tell the truth that they just aren't the Ashkenazi? They're not the Jews. They're just not. They're just not the Jews, right? They're just not. It's important to understand that they're just not the Jews. In fact, listen to this. Here's another piece of it. I'm going to show you this piece right here. Armenia is also sometimes called Amalek. Family, who is familiar with the Bible and knows who Amalek is? Is not Amalek a son of Edom? Does not the scripture say that Amalek is a son of Edom? Yes. In fact, the Byzantines called Armenia Edom. Did you know that Herod, listen to me when I say this, one of the sons of Herod actually reigned in Armenia? You can look this up. Let's look it up. I'm gonna show you right now. Let's see if I can just find it real fast. I want to show you that. I forget his name though. I forget exactly his name, but there's a ruler. Let me show Herod. Right here. You see this person right here? I don't even know how you pronounce that name. Tigray. I'm never gonna try it. Tigran. You can see right here of the Herodian dynasty. Guess where he reigned? Guess where he reigned? Armenia. This is the list of the monarchs of Armenia. You can see right here. And he's an Edomite. This is an Edomite that actually reigned in Armenia. You understand what I'm saying here? This is actually his family. You can see his dynasty. We can click it. Herodian dynasty. Let's read it. The Herodian dynasty is a royal dynasty of Edomians, Edomites descent, Edomite descent, ruling the Herodian kingdom and later the Herodian tetrarchy. I'm gonna say the tetrarch. I keep pronouncing that word weird, but he's ruling in the kingdom of the Herods of Edom, right? That's important to understand that this is an Edomite that's reigning in Armenia. Now understand this. If a king reigns in an area, don't you for a second think that the people are not merging with the people. That's important to understand. Yep. So basically, that's right, beloved family. That's exactly right. Armenia, Amalek, Ashkenazi, based on their own information, are Edomites. Based on their own information. Now, obviously, for the sake of understanding, I just know that they're Turks. But based on their own information, they're Edomites. That's their information. Their own information that's saying that. So that's important to understand. So he was a king in 6 AD to 12 AD. That's before Messiah was there. And then Herod got in the picture. And guess what? Herod was also ruling in that area too. Herod had power in all those different areas. If he has someone over there, he's going to have people all over the area. Why do you think Herod ruled over Jerusalem? You think that was a mistake that he ruled over Jerusalem? He actually, in fact, they started to merge with Rome. But that's another story. They started to merge with Rome. A lot of Edomites were actually merging with Rome. For example, Remember what it said, the Khazarians are Armenians. They're the same people. I'm going to show you an example that they were merging with Rome. I'm going to show you. And I'm going to show you that people knew it, that Rome was actually trying to hide documents. No, well, not Rome, Edom. Edom was trying to hide documents. In fact, that's right here. This person right here, she quotes that Edom was hiding documents, right? 1840, he says, after Herod had destroyed the greatest part of his supposed enemies, he began to exhibit a marked contempt for the Jewish religion and laws from the beginning of his reign to the final destruction of the temple, right? The high priest had no hereditary right, so he took away their heritage. He took away their heritage, right? But were set up and removed at his pleasure, and that of his successors, he also destroyed the authority of the Grand Sanhedrin and burned the Jewish records, that he might be thought originally an Israelite. Do you see the beginning of this, family? That they just tried to pull one back then to try to make themselves seem like they're originally an Israelite, and they were merging with Rome. Have you ever heard of Leo the Fourth? Right? He's a Khazar. Leo the Fourth actually is of the mother's line. That's why a lot of them, they would talk about the mother's line, right? He's actually a Khazar from Constantine. Right here, Leo the Fourth, the Khazar. Leo the Fourth, the Khazar, merged with Rome. Merged with Rome. One of the rulers of Rome. He was actually one of the rulers of Rome. How did Khazarians rule in Rome? How did that happen? So what I just showed you today, I just wanted to show you this, that you can see they're starting to leave this idea. If you remember, what was the law of return? The law of return was what? They had to have a Jewish mother or a Jewish grandparent, but now it says a Jewish mother. Now they're trying to say, well, they have a what's the word I'm looking for? Semitic father. They say they have a Semitic father. We know that isn't true. We already disproved that this is not an idea to be Jewish or Judean, because we know the book Numbers 1 tells us no, it's through the father's line. So they say that is someone who's converted or through their mother's line, which both of them are false, because you're not a Jew if you don't have Christ, right? Now, if one of these Ashkenazi Turks convert and take in Christ, that's another story. You know, if they take in Christ, understand this. I'm not a camp. I'm letting you know the truth. I want you to understand, if they convert and take in Christ, that's another story. Christ will deal with them as he please. He's going to choose what he's going to do with them. I can't tell you that they're going to be on head of a tribe or anything like that. They're not going to be like the 12 disciples where it says they're going to judge the tribes of Israel, but they will definitely be, as the Lord says, whoever takes in Christ, right, is Abraham's seed. But they're not Abraham's seed by blood. They can't say that they're Jew and they don't have Christ. They're not Jew. Not by belief. If they don't have Christ, they're not Jew by belief. And they're not Jew, period, by bloodline. That's important to understand. They are not the Judeans. When you see them fighting in Israel, know for a fact those are Turks fighting Turks. That's very important to understand. They were always fighting because there was a confederacy the whole time. There was always a confederacy. That's just how it was. So what you're seeing here, what I just showed you is how to understand DNA. Because if you take a DNA test, in fact, let me just show you what it looks like. Let me just show you what an Ashkenazi DNA test looks like. Okay. Show you something. I'm gonna show you what a Jewish DNA test result looks like. Right? Does not this confirm everything that you just seen? You see that? It says, oh, there it is. Ashkenazi. This basically what they spread out, sparse I don't know why I can't pronounce some of these words, but this right here, you can see they left this area, and this is actually them. They actually went into this area right here, right? Where they actually dispersed. They dispersed and they actually landed in this area. And why does all the genetics point to this area? Right? And some of them will point to this now with the more genetic studies, more information with the Philistines. Remember I showed you that with the Philistine DNA? Remember I had showed you that right here? They had a a video on YouTube where they was talking about it, because at first they thought they were Canaanites. So you can see, like, I'm gonna show you one of them that actually says Canaanite on it, but they know who they are now. Right here, you can see they say they were Canaanites, but these are actually Philistines. That's what they actually are. They're actually Philistines. Because they know, because they did an update once they actually knew that this was a Philistine graveyard, because they found them in the land of Ashdod and Ashkelon. So right here, the Ashkenazi Jews had roughly 70 to 60% contribution to the Philistines. You see that? And no wonder they're right here, right? We can look at some different types of results. You can get an idea. You can see these different types. You can see right there. You can see where they're all usually at. Let's see. You can see some over here, right? Different areas. Turkey. Just to get an idea of what their DNA results look like. Now, it's better to get if someone has a result with the actual information of the, because they think that people don't know the J1 and J2 and stuff like that. They think people that don't actually understand those things, but we do. We actually understand those things okay. So you can see, actually I want to get a genetic one. This one is okay, but this is on that list. So you can see, you can kind of see. I'm not even going to click it because I already have it here. And that's why I wanted to show you that. Listen to me when I say this. Now, I basically set it at the Ashkenazi are Turks. Now, are they Edom? There's a high probability that they're in fact Edom family. They're in fact Edom. But let me see. I want to read Dawid bin Israel. I'm just reading some of them. Amen. Yes. Yep. That's right. That's right. Isn't that something? Isn't that something? They're very closely related. That's a person. Genesis. That's right. That's right. The family tree. Remember how all those historical quotes said that they were Japheth? All we have to do is really look at a family tree, and we'll understand these things. I'm gonna close this one. I'll pull up a family tree here, right here. Let's take a look at this family tree. You can see right here. Before I look at this family tree, let's read this historical quote one more time. You see what it said right there? It says, the Germans owe their origin to him who in scripture is called Ashkenazim. Now, why does he call them Germans? Because they're in the area of Germany, right? It says, who in scripture is called Ashkenazim, who was the son of Gomer. So we got to find out who's the son of Gomer, Ashkenaz, right? Right here. Let's take a look at the family tree. Now all you have to do is read Ezekiel 38 and 9. I mean 38 and 39. If you read Ezekiel 38 and 39, you actually understand that a lot of these names are actually mentioned, right? Gog and Magog, Meshach and Tubal, right? You may have seen Kittim in the book, right? Tugarma, Kittim that's more Rome. Javane, that's the Greek, for sake of understanding. Now that doesn't mean this whole line is corrupted. Just because Canaan was cursed, the branch of Canaan, underneath Canaan, remember Canaan, the son of Ham, was cursed? Not all of them. Because what did God say about Mizraim? He said that they can actually join in, right? It's very important to understand the Egyptians. What was the promise to the Egyptians? That they can actually join in Israel. He said in the third generation, they'll enter into Israel, right? It's very important. That's why you see when they left out, some of the Egyptians followed with them because they were actually welcome in. That doesn't mean all of Ham's line was cursed. Japheth, though he does have some of these lines, you can see Gomer, Ashkenaz, that doesn't mean all Japheth is cursed, right? Even when Shem got cursed, right? When Abraham line got cursed, did that mean the whole line of Shem was cursed? No, right? It's very important to understand that we got to look at these things carefully, right? We got to look at these things and understand. But if you look at Ezekiel 38 and 39, you'll see these names. You'll see these names talked about, some of them. Some of these names, not more so Magog, Meshach and Tubal, Tugarma, right? Ashkenaz, just to show you that that's for real, for real. Let's go to Ezekiel 38, and then we'll look at 39. I just want to show you that we can find these names there. Right here. And remember, it's prophetic. It's just, if we just got to pay attention to it, because if we ignore that, then we're ignoring the most obvious things. We're going to be ignoring the most obvious things. Watch what it says here. Look at the names. He says, I am against you, O Gog, of the land of Magog, chief prince of who? Meshach and Tubal, right? Chief prince of Meshach and Tubal, right? We can look at here, Meshach and Tubal. What? We got some things being pointed out. Meshach and Tubal, right? What are the names do we see here in this list of this prophecy? Tugarma. See right there? Gomer and all his bands, the house of Tugarma of the north quarters. You see that? Tugarma of the north quarters. Let's go back right here. You see what it's saying right there? Tugarma. Gomer and his bands, right? Gomer and his bands, and Tugarma. Now, if you know, this one's supposed to represent Russia, supposedly. This one's supposed to represent Russia, and Tugarma, right? See the names that we're seeing there. You can see what he's talking about there. It gets very deep on what he plans on doing. We can go over and get a little more right here. You can see Meshach and Tubal, Gog and Magog. Right there, Magog right there. I will send a fire on Magog, right? Even talks about that in Revelation, Magog, Gog and Magog. You can see right there, Gomer is actually Gog, for the sake of understanding. This is Magog right here, right? That's very important. So a lot of the line is being pointed out. There's also that prophecy in the book of Numbers that talks about the star of Jacob coming. Remember, it talks about the end, what he's going to do to Kittim. The prophecy of Numbers, what is it? Numbers, I think it's Numbers 24. I think. Let me just make sure so that I'm quoting that right. Is it 24? Yes. Numbers 24, right? He says, I shall see him, but not now. I shall behold him, but not near, right? A star shall come out of Jacob. And let me go down. It actually says right here on 24 and 24, I'm going to read it to you. It says this, right? Kittim or Chittim is the same thing. It says the ships shall come from the coast of Chittim, right? That's Numbers 24 and 24, right? The ships shall come from the coast of Chittim and shall afflict Asher and shall afflict Eber. What does it mean, Asher and Eber? Asher, right? Eber, right there. Asher, for the sake of understanding, would be actually the line from Eber, for the sake of understanding. Asher, not Ashur, my bad. Asher being from the descendant of Shem. Now, that's actually saying Asher and Eber, that's just saying that Kittim is going to afflict both of the tribes of Israel, right? Because it's mentioning two names of Shem. It's basically mentioning that Kittim is going to afflict both of the tribes of Israel. That's what it actually is, what it means. That's what it actually means, for the sake of understanding. Where he says, in the ships, right? Because he says, I'm going to take you into captivity on slave ships, right? That's a fact, without a doubt. Because the curse fell, because we know the curse fell, because Christ said it was going to fall. Christ said it. Remember what he said? It shall fall by the edge of the sword, shall go in captivity into all nations, and shall fall by the edge of the sword, right? And then who's going to own Jerusalem? He said, Jerusalem shall be trampled down by Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles is fulfilled, right? That's a prophecy. It says, the ship shall come from the coast of Chittim, and shall afflict Asher, well, Ashura, that's actually this. That would be that. And shall afflict Eber, and he also shall perish forever. That is Ashura. That is Ashura. I double checked to make sure. That's right. So you see that? It's saying that it's going to afflict two people, two of the same tribes, for the sake of understanding. And that's important. That's very important to understand, because if we actually understand who these actually are, then the pieces start to come together. Then the pieces start to actually come together. And then we understand what's actually going on. What's the real picture behind this thing? What's the real picture? What is the Lord actually trying to get us to see? Is there something that the Lord wants to see with these certain names? Why is he being very specific with these names, right? Why is even Revelation bringing up Gog and Magog, right? Why is all these things happening? because we gotta understand that there's some perversion that's happening in the world today. Today, there's a perversion happening in the world today. And a lot of people, you know what the problem is? When people get in the truth, the problem is when people get in the truth, a lot of them, especially when they're of a darker skin race, they call them Hebrew Israelites, or they call them hate, that they have hate in their heart. But rather, all they're doing is seeking truth. If there was no truth for them to bring forth, then there would be no truth to bring forth. But if there is truth to bring forth, then we probably should consider the evidence. We should probably consider the evidence. And that's what I'm saying here, is that we should consider this evidence that I just showed you as other evidences, that they are indeed Turks, and that it goes deeper than what many people actually think. They may indeed be Edom, the same Edom that is prophesied in Ezekiel and Obadiah, right? It's levels on these things. Now, for the person who is Ashkenazi, convert to Christianity, leave the Jewish traditions, right? Because that's not going to save you. Without Christ, it doesn't matter if you say that you're Jewish. It does not matter if you wish to be Jew. That does not matter. Only Christ matters. Every one of the Sadducees and the all of them, right? The Pharisees and the Sadducees, they were Judeans. Some of them probably wasn't, because that's a history that supposedly Edom also converted to Judaism, and a lot of Edomites were actually there. In fact, Herodians being of Herod, Herodians were seen in a temple, is without a doubt. We seen that when Messiah was in the temple. Someone came with a coin. They came with a Herodian, and he tried to tempt them because the Herodian was with them. Being a Herodian, being over the Jerusalem, right? Being with Herod, being of the Edomite stock, right? So that's also important to take note of. That's also very important to take note of. And it may be that these individuals are indeed Edom. Now understand, I'm saying that based on their information, on the Armenia information, because what did we just read? That they are Armenian, without a doubt. Is genetically confirmed. That's what genetics confirm to us, that they're Armenian. That means everything that they wrote about the Armenians is them. That's without a doubt. That's a fact that cannot be denied, because they have exactly the same genetics. Exactly the same genetics. It's without a doubt, for the sake of understanding. Maybe there's a worse Holocaust that we got to pay attention to. Maybe we got to pay attention to that 2,000-year captivity that actually happened to the real people that were sent across all the world. As the scripture says, they shall go into every. In fact, Jeremiah said in the time to come, when the captivity happens, there would be not one nation they would not go into captivity. Not one nation they would not go into captivity. And understand this when I say this. The Ashkenazi have not been into a captivity. They were always up here. They were always in these areas. It's very important to understand. They were always up in these areas. It's just always been like that. The Mongols, they chased them out. That's why you see Mongolia. These people, they had pushed them all the way over here. They pushed the Turks. Now the Turks were in the middle area over here. They were in the middle area right over here in these areas. Now, if you want to know how that happened, that's another level. That's another level on how that happened. But we could go over that, because we do have a video on how that happened, how they actually pushed them out and everything. Because they're originally Gog Turk, right? They pushed them, moved them this way. Got a video on that for the deep details and those things. Now, for the sake of understanding, one more time, I want to mention what this video is mainly about. Genetics is actually a language, but it has a limit. It has a limitation. Genetics have a limited language. It's going to tell you which haplogroup or what group or grouping is a person, right? It's not going to give you deep historic information. It can connect you to historical people. It could connect you to historical people of the past, but it doesn't tell you exactly if you're related to them. And it doesn't tell you exactly who they are or where they came from. That's important to understand with genetics, but that's why you have to get historical quotes. So I'm not just saying it's based on genetics. I'm not just saying it's based on linguistics. I'm not just saying it's based on historical quotes. I'm also saying this because of all those things plus the Bible. You understand what I'm saying? So this is what I want you to see, is that this is actually visually and logically understandable. This is visually and logically understandable. But I'm a poor man, right? I'm a poor man. We don't have a big reach, but we're trying to reach out to more brothers and sisters so they can know what we're finding. that we're finding out that indeed these people know the truth and they're not bringing it to the front papers. They're not bringing it out to the front papers, and it's a big deal. Why is it a big deal? Because if we're talking prophecy, it's a big deal. It's a very big deal. Give the people back their heritage. Give the real people back their heritage so they stop being in the hip hop culture and all the madness that's going on with them. It's all types of things that because the people don't know who they are, that they're all over the place. But that's another subject. So Sunday, we'll go into who are the actual real people, and I'm going to show you that they're related to the Ishmaelites. Remember what I told you, how the Ishmaelites are E1B1B is without a doubt that the Ishmaelites are the E1B1B. And guess who got to be related to them for someone to be exactly the real people? They got to be E. They got to be in the E chromosome. They got to have the chromosome E. They got to have the Y chromosome E in them. They got to. But there's a difference between E1B1B and E1B1A, and that's another subject for the sake of understanding. They'll try to say it's African, but I'm going to show you Sunday, y'all willing. It's without a doubt. It's without a doubt. Just like I showed you with that genetic report of the real Sephardic Jews DNA test, shows you. That's the real Sephardic. They'll never bring that out in the papers. They'll never bring it out. They'll never bring it out in the papers. But I'm telling you the truth, that if you stay close, Yah bless you in all that you do. Yah bless you in all that you do and all that you plan on doing. So I wanted to show you this because I think DNA is the language of truth, but it has to be understood in its context. And understand, this is Yah's doing. DNA is Yah's doing. DNA is a language. And it even proves the Bible. If you understand, DNA is a language, and languages don't make themselves. They don't. Languages don't just spring up by themselves. Languages are the product of an intelligent design. That's what language is. Someone has to sit there and write the instructions and have the instructions in order for it all to come together. And that's what DNA is. DNA is actually a language, just like math. Just like math is a language, and just like blueprints are a language. But DNA is a language beyond all our languages. But it takes someone like a geneticist to understand these things, right? So I think it's very important to know these things. Now, I'm going to leave off on one more thing. Before I leave off. I'm going to show you a geneticist who actually confirms this, as I showed this before, but I think it's important. One more time. We'll close all these. All right. Amen. The Most High marker. That's right. Now let me show you something on YouTube. I can show you this and you can look it up. If you've never seen this video, I want you to look it up. I also want you, if you've never heard of the history behind the Turks, I want you to look up this video right here and then just watch that video right there. It's an interesting historical video. But let me show you something. Let me show you something right here. You see this right here? Jews answers in Genesis. You'll find it really quick. Let me show you something. What this is a geneticist. This person, he's a real geneticist. I'm gonna show you what he says. I'm gonna show you what he says about them. I'm gonna go right here and I'm gonna show you what he says about them. He actually says they're the Turks. That's what he says. He actually says they're the Turks. But let me make sure this thing actually works. Because sometimes YouTube be misbehaving. Sometimes it misbehaves. I'm gonna close that, and I'm gonna try to open it again. But if you've never seen that, if you didn't see that video, if I can't play it, see that video. See that video, and that person, that geneticist, he's gonna tell you. Let me just try again. I'm gonna go to a playlist, and the playlist is right here, the new history of human races. And I'm gonna go to
North Africa, mostly unpopulated. Half of China. So China has 1 billion people. They're concentrated in half of what is the country of China. The other half
right here
that we haven't yet discussed.
Okay, watch this. I'm gonna go right to what his results is. But he talks about how the DNA proves that the Turks came in and they settled in these areas. This is a geneticist. He's a real geneticist, and he tells us that the Turks settled here, they settled in here, they settled over here, and they settled over here, and they settled all in these areas. Now watch what he says here.
This history of the Turks seems to find a very strong echo, the geographic extent of Group J today. So who are the Jews? Who are modern day Jewish people? Well, it seems that a section, I should say, a subsection of modern Jews, along with many other Middle Eastern peoples, and some Europeans, like Greeks and other Balkan Peninsula folks, and Italians, and even some Spaniards at a low percentage, and even some Indians, all share a common Turkish heritage. They trace some of their origins to Central Asia. Not all of these people, but if you're in the Middle East, a heavy percentage of you do trace your origins via Group J to the Turkish people. And what we've seen in this episode is, once again, Central Asia seems to play this dominant role in the world history of peoples. We've seen other.
Now you heard what he just said. Did we not just confirm that they are indeed Turks? Now he says it right here. Now, did he make a mistake? Did he actually make a mistake and go back on it? Let's see what he says in the questions and answers. He actually confirms
long way to go before we sample the globe.
He confirms that his first answer was indeed sure.
I emphasized a point that the mainstream scientific community did, and I didn't get to everything else they said. So let me back up to episode 18, where I was arguing that one of the dominant lineages in modern Jewish people, particularly Ashkenazi Jewish people, there was this paper in 2009 that came out claiming they could find one that seemed to fit all the proper parameters for being a Jewish lineage. Episode 18, we walked through some of the problems. The lineage specifically, and this is a direct screenshot from the paper. You may not be able to zoom in and see here. I'm going to try to highlight here. There's a whole bunch of different lineages being shown. There's D, E, C, G, H, I, J, L. There's many of the major groups in this tree that we've seen, and they have arranged by columns here the frequency of these various lineages in various Jewish groups. So this first column, which is headed by the letter C for the Kohanim, those who claim descent from the Jewish priesthood. This I column is just Israelites in general, who don't necessarily claim descent from the priesthood. And here's the percentage overall. The point I was emphasizing in that episode was dealing with one particular lineage, this J. You may not be able to see here because the screen is so small, but it's this J-P58. It's a sub-branch of the J lineage. I went on to conclude that J is probably an echo of the Turkish conquest of the Middle East, going in and then being pushed out by the Mongols and coming back in again. The reason I spent a lot of time there was because this was the main lineage that the paper highlighted as being potentially Jewish.
Potentially Jewish, but by a geneticist, and the information that you just seen is true, family. Listen to me when I say this. They are Turks based on their genetics. Based on genetics, they are Turks. And not just that, I just showed you the linguistic information. I showed you the historic information. I showed you the biblical information and their own information. They themselves don't just say that they're Turks. They say that they're Edom. That's what they say. They say that themselves. Understand that they themselves say that. Now, that's not what I'm concluding, but based on their own information, you can take that and run with it because it is their information. You know, it is their information. I'm not stressing on it, but indeed, and for a fact, without a doubt, their own information says the Armenians, which they are, remember, vice versa, right? Armenia is the same as Ashkenaz. Ashkenazi, the same as Armenia. No one can say nothing about it because it says vice versa. They are the same. They are exactly the same people. It's without a doubt. And they say without a doubt that they are genetically Edom. So just take that and understand what I'm showing you here. These things that I'm showing you, understand the world is a little more darker than the world than many people actually know. The world is a little more, what's the word I'm looking for? Deceitful. A little more deceitful than many people actually know. And the truth is, if we don't seek these facts, we'll never know them. Seek and you shall find. Knock and it shall be open to you. Ask and you shall receive, right? There's nothing hidden that won't be revealed. And this is going to be revealed in this time. And you already have it early. So with that, family, DNA is a language and it's talking to you. I hope that it's talking to you well. And I hope that we're decoding it for you. So with that, family, be blessed, be beloved,